Hello, everybody. I'm just going to say a couple words, just welcomingly, and get it started. There will be Q&A at the end. Lee loves Q&A, and he has his own method for it, I understand. But yeah, I just wanted to show something to Lee and see his first reaction.
Oh, no. I'm gonna make you feel bad, dude, okay?
That's all I have to say.
All right, so my name's Lee Kebler. I've been in the tech and entertainment industry for a decade or more now. So when asked to come and give a keynote, it was a big area that I could choose from. And I typically go towards, and we are going to talk about this, but the concept of like empathetic design and technology. And I don't mean that in the emotional sense of that like VR is the empathy machine. You'll never hear me say that. I don't like that conversation. But more so in the concept of making sure that you're designing technology for people who are going to use it. And we are going to talk about that. But in the last couple of weeks, kind of what I wanted to talk about changed. So we're going to have a little bit more of a group kind of therapy discussion here a little bit. So when I was a kid, my first job was in a magic shop in Maggie Valley, North Carolina when I was 15 years old. And I picked up this book that was called Designing Miracles. And it was a book that taught you how to do some card tricks, but it was more about the theory of how you create something that inspires. So I was like, oh, that's great. I love this idea, designing miracles. I work in tech. This is going to make sense. I'm going to put all this together. But let me ask you a really quick question. How's everyone doing right now? Okay. That's about what I expected. Because if we're honest with ourselves, if we're truly asking that question, everyone's not sure. You got this little voice in the back of your head going, holy crap, the stock market's down. We don't know where all of these massive tech companies are going. I spend too much time on Reddit, doom scrolling. Like this stuff is in your head. And that got me thinking about this idea of designing miracles, which is basically what every technologist will tell you they do. Miracles are considered a real positive, uplifting thing, something that you want to see happen. But they only exist when things are bad. Really think about that. Miracles step in to take a bad situation from bad to good. It may not fully make sense how it happens. It seems magical, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. How we look at the technology landscape as people, as what we find passionate about, and say, how do I make something that matters, that makes this world feel a little bit better, makes me feel a little bit better. Now, along this conversation, we're just basically going to talk about my career, which has been very strange. So buckle up, it's a weird conversation. You're going to have questions, and I am a big fan of Q&A. So I'm leaving a section at the end for Q&A here. But I want to kind of figure out how much time. So along this conversation, when you have a question pop up, simply raise your hand, put it back down. I'm not going to answer it as soon as your hand raised, but it gives me a cue of, okay, we are going to have some questions. And then just try to remember what that question is. And it may change, but it'll at least help me know what's coming up. This is not my first, nor I don't think anyone in here's first approach to not being quite sure what the economic situation is in the technology landscape and the life landscape, things like that. First time that I kind of was thrown into this was 2008. I had recently graduated out of college, and welcome to the working world. The economy goes down the crapper. What do I do? Where do I go? So I'm just out of college, and this is how I've been introduced to the working world. Oh, crud. So in 2008, I had just graduated. I was living in Nashville, Tennessee. I had a mentor, fantastic guy, James Fogelsong. He taught at the university I went to, and he had worked in the music industry for ages and ages and ages. He had done everything. While I was in school there, I actually went to Nashville to play guitar. Like every person who goes, I'm going to go to Nashville to play the guitar. It was not very long before I realized there was no way in the world I was going to be the best guitar player in Nashville. That just was not going to happen. So I go and Mr. Fogelsong, what do I do? I don't know what I'm going to do if this is too competitive. It's just too much of a landscape. And he said, okay, what do you do that you don't see other people doing in Nashville right now? Well, in high school, I DJ'd some school dances, DJ'd at a couple country clubs because I'm from Florida, and that's what you do is you go DJ for old people at golf courses. Nothing super exciting. He said, okay, are there a lot of DJs in Nashville? And at the time, the answer was no. There really weren't. So he said, okay, focus on that. Just go do that. That's something you enjoy doing. Go be a DJ. Okay, so I started doing that. That's what I actually did through college is I toured with bands. This was an era where every band had a DJ. I got really lucky, got to do that through college. Then I graduate college, the economy goes kaput, and I'm now saddled with how do I work in technology and music in a housing crisis? What do I do? And so what I did was I realized that the education system, which was investing into tech ed at the time, wasn't teaching people how to do sound design. And ended up starting my first company, 2008, called Alphabite Technologies. You've never heard of it. You weren't supposed to hear of it. That's totally fine. Where I wrote curriculum for the school system to teach how to use Pro Tools to middle school students going through tech ed classrooms. That was where I first got that idea of like, oh, I can take things that I know and I can move them in a way where it helps fill a void. Something's not happening. So that's where I start. Ultimately, to fast forward to the end of the conversation, really good technology solves a problem. And I think everyone kind of knows that. Like that's kind of like yeah, of course, that makes sense. But we often get distracted by the new. We get distracted by angel investment. We get distracted by Forbes articles that tell us what we're supposed to focus on. And you probably get distracted by technology podcasts like the one that I host with Kathy Hackle every week. And okay, well, let's go into this direction. And the goal is to not get distracted by all that and to like focus on what you know and what you do. All of this leads to looking at the landscape of turbulence and finding out where you fit. In 2011, I was still a DJ, but I was like the old school vinyl turntable scratch DJs, like hip hop music. That's what I loved doing, like actual vinyl DJ. And 2011 gave the rise to EDM. Holy crud, there was Deadmau5 and Skrillex and Steve Aoki and all of these DJs were showing up and they were performing in a way where, and I think if everyone can kind of like hop in the time machine and go back 10 years, you'll remember the classic like, oh, they turned into a meme where the DJ was playing some like electronic music and then they would turn a knob and they'd throw their hands in the air and the audience would go crazy and everyone started asking the question, well, wait, what is the DJ actually doing if his hands aren't on the DJ equipment? And it became a real, like, it was a very real meme. And that's why this whole era of music didn't stand for very long. Well, simultaneously at this point, my wife and I were living in Nashville. We're living in an attic apartment, which is not as bad as it sounds, but it's not much better. And I had bought an Xbox 360, only because I wanted to play Halo. I did not know that the Xbox shipped with an Xbox Connect. I had no idea what the Xbox Connect was. I was working in the music industry. I had no idea. And I hooked it up. And I played that weird game that it came packed with. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. Anyone else like that movie? It was a hit, small. Back to the Future 2, there's this scene where a really little Elijah Woods is at the arcade with Marty McFly, and he plays Wild Gunman and he wins, and Elijah Woods' famous quote is, "You have to use your hands." Anyone? That's a baby's toy. I had that revelation while playing this game. I was like, this is the coolest piece of technology used in the absolute worst way possible. It was not a great video game controller. So I took it apart. I realized it just had a USB port on it, and I started kind of reverse engineering how it worked. I had some friends in Nashville. I started building this community of people of like-minded, who were in the entertainment industry, but also like to take apart things and tinker. This was before Maker was really a big thing. That was really in the 2014 era. We didn't realize we were makers, but one of my friends was a manager of a dive bar. Not a nice location. It was just a dive bar called 12th and Porter. It is no longer there in Nashville. And it had a big attic space. No air conditioning, but a lot of space. So we would go and use this space to work on our technology. And the Xbox Connect started getting kind of a hacker following. How do you take this controller and make it do really cool, different things? My goal was to make it control my DJ equipment. So when I did this, it actually meant something. What does this do for a DJ? So I started reverse engineering it, figuring out how to get it into my DJ equipment, made sure it was working, functional. But a lot of missteps and mistakes, the thing does not work outside because the sun's a glowing ball of infrared, and I didn't put that together until it was too late. But thankfully, this bar was inside. And my other friend who was up there, who was the manager of this bar, he was really into LEDs, obsessively into LEDs. And he had this idea of LEDs and RFID chips. He thought, oh, I could put these into a wristband, and they could talk to each other, and we could do patterns on the audience, and we could light up the group and things like this. Now, I want to remind you, this is 2011, 2012. No one's really doing this at the time. So we start doing this, and we come up with these really cool pieces of technology. And he goes, we need to see if this actually works with a real show. I want to do a real show. Okay, I'm down. It's your bar. You can do that. He goes, well, we do have one EDM night coming up. We're going to snake the first 30 minutes. Well, what do you mean? We're not going to tell the booker we're doing this. We're just going to open the doors 30 minutes early. We'll have you go up on stage. We'll do the show, and we'll get some footage of it and see how it works. Cool. What's the worst that can happen? So we do. He hands out his wristbands that we handmade the day before. It was 300 of these stupid things. I go and I set up my turntables and my Xbox Connect and get my laptop and all that put together. And we do this 30-minute set. Oh, if there were a time machine that I could hop in and go back to any point in my career and watch it from a third-person perspective, I would go back to that set. Because what we didn't realize was that night, because we took those risks, was going to actually change everything for both of our careers. I was told time and time again, working with this Xbox Connect thing, it's cool, but But then I started performing with it. And all of a sudden, that ability to stand on that stage, and the audience understood, and grab sound, and no longer was it just a weird pose. It had meaning. They could see a performance, and there was something happening. It was reflected back on the LEDs behind us. And then the whole audience with their wristbands started interacting with each other and with the show. It was only 30 minutes. It was a fantastic show. Some people shot some video, uploaded it online, and it started getting shared here and there. But it didn't go viral. A friend of mine saw it, thought the video was cool, sent it, shared it. And then shortly thereafter, one morning I wake up, and I've got an email from will.i.am, from the Black Eyed Peas. I don't know Will. His email address is not william@blackeyedpeas.com. I go back and forth talking with William Adams, who I don't know, until finally a manager reaches out and is like, no, you actually are talking to Will. He was flying from London back to the US. He saw this video. He thinks it's dope. He wants you to come out to Los Angeles. Can you come? I don't know. I'm working at this radio station. I'm an engineer. I'm making $10 an hour. I don't know if I can actually take this risk. So thankfully, I had a really great boss at that radio station, and he said, you're fired. Because you have to do this. If this doesn't work, come back, you have a job. But there's no way you don't do this. And honestly, it meant the world to me, and I never saw him again. I walked out of the office, and I never actually saw the guy again. That was the last conversation I had with him. So I go to Los Angeles, I meet with Will. He's like, this is great. He had an ongoing bet with another guy in his business where the other guy thought it was choreography. Will knew it was real. I flew out to Los Angeles. He's like, told you it was real. If you can build this, I'm doing some other stuff that I want you to be a part of. If you're open to the job. Of course I'm open to the job. I'm making $10 an hour in a radio station gear closet. So I take the job and I finally end up moving to like Los Angeles. I would then spend the next couple of years working with Will. I did some really great installations, art installations, one of them at Vivid Sydney. Most people in the United States don't know that this happens, but in Australia, our summer, their winter, Sydney, Australia turns into like the most futuristic landscape you've ever seen. All the buildings get projection mapped. It's super cool. I'm surprised that we don't do similar things like that in the US. It's on a massive scale. I get introduced to Intel, who's working with Will at the time. This makes sense later. And we do an art installation where we projection map the facade of the Museum of Contemporary Art. It's across the quay from the sales. And we turn it into a playable instrument. They wanted to make it a playable instrument. So we projection map it. We use the gesture recognition cameras. We have sponsorship from Intel to do this. 3 people at a time can come up, moving their hands. They're moving shapes that are projected on the walls. It's remixing like Black Eyed Peas music, pop music, things like that. Tons of fun. I then go on to be able to produce music with Will. I work on the Britney Spears record that he was working on, so I actually get that's like my first big production credit, which is a crazy like introduction to a production credit that I absolutely did not deserve, but hey, I'll take it. And build the actual studio for the Peas, which is still there in LA. But the thing that I learned about working with Will and working with these other artists was whenever Will wanted to work in technology, whatever it was a question of why. What is it really doing? Not just because you can, but the why. Who's the customer? How are they going to interact with it? What are they going to do with it? Why does it matter? In 2015, go through my notes here real quick. In 2015, I get an opportunity. It's not an opportunity. I get a glimpse of something that I wanted to see since I was like 8 years old. And that was the VR space. So I was absolutely the kid who saved up birthday money, Christmas cards from relatives that I rarely see. And instead of buying an N64, I actually bought the Nintendo Virtual Boy. I was that guy who, they sold at least one. It wasn't great, but it was a promise that I had seen in media for so much of the 90s. VR is coming. It's going to be Lawnmower Man. It's going to be amazing. You're going to play right in the video game. And then Virtual Boy comes out and tells me, not yet. So in 2015, after Oculus finally gets out of just a Kickstarter and becomes a manufacturable product, practical, in a sense, I get very excited. And I say, okay, this is what I want to do. So I go back to Nashville, and I decide I'm going to start a VR company. I don't know how. I hadn't asked myself yet the why or the who. What am I going to do? I was just super excited about the hype. And this was probably my hardest introduction into the hype cycle, because I didn't know what that was yet. That wasn't really something like, who's familiar with the hype cycle? Okay, you know, things go up and then you get the trough of disillusionment, blah, 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 and then it like levels out. I hadn't learned that yet. So the hype cycle got me. And you could build the hardware. You know, Oculus was doing some hardware. HTC Vive was big. We finally had graphics cards coming out that would make sense to build like a desktop unit. But it was very expensive. It was expensive from just like an experimental standpoint. You have a $2,500 desktop computer. I don't have like that much knowledge in this space. Okay, I'm gonna have to teach myself how to code in Unity, I guess. I had a little bit of a coding background, but it was mostly in like web and app creation. All right, I can do this, I can do this. So I did, and I built a couple of really rough demos. I figured out how to hook up the hardware, bring 3D models in, make them appear so you could walk through it. My first introduction into the technology as a client, from a client standpoint, was actually a tire company. Of all of the amazing, sexy applications you could imagine with VR, it was tires. But it worked, it made sense. They wanted the ability to see inside of their tires, to peel back the rubber, see all of the layers that you can't see. It's actually a really good use case if you think about it, right? Tires have belts in them, but if you were to take a hacksaw into a tire and cut into it, it just looks like rubber and metal meshed together. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. VR would allow us, and we actually used AR in this, you could point a phone at a tire and peel back the layers. It was a really good sales mechanism for like a couple trade shows. That gave me enough momentum to hire one developer who was better than me, and I got out of development as fast as possible and realized, no, you gotta hire people who are better than you. But then I got to thinking, like, what do I do with this? Now, let's go back to the beginning of the talk, where I asked how everyone was doing, and we all have this economic question in the back of our head, right? We don't really know where things are going. Politics aside, we just don't know. But this is not the first time we have been here. It's 2016. We have the beginning of the first Trump administration. And one of the first things that he announces starts with the letter T, rhymes with Ferris, tariffs. I don't know why we're so surprised right now. Like, the tariffs thing, this is what happened last time. We're here. We can get through this. Now, what do tariffs have to do with what I'm talking about? I'm in Nashville. Tennessee is Country Music Hall of Fame. I get that. It's all that. It's also steel country. We do a lot of steel manufacturing in Tennessee. And one of the first tariffs is a 25% tariff on steel. And that got me thinking. That means all of these steel manufacturing companies are questioning what they're going to do. Now, I also recently had seen a movie on Netflix called The Founder. Kevin Costner plays the founder of McDonald's. There's a small little company. It's not small. You just don't know it's there. But there's this company about 30 minutes outside of Nashville called Franke. Now, Franke has been around forever. They're from Switzerland. They're a steel manufacturing company that makes commercial kitchens for like all the fast food restaurants. They're a massive company, but they would tell you they do steel manufacturing. They're the closest company by geography that I could drive to and maybe get some attention. So I reach out to the Franke company. This was a time where anyone who was talking about VR could get a meeting because there weren't very many people who were doing it professionally yet. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk with you about VR solutions, specifically for steel in enterprise, manufacturing. Now, in my career, that got a lot of weird looks because I went from producing records and working in Hollywood to enterprise steel manufacturing for commercial kitchens. Honestly, I wouldn't have done it any other way. So I get the meeting, they come in, I put together some of their models, put some kitchens together, and I actually get the CEO and the president of the company in the studio, and they go through it, and they love it. Now, I don't really know what they're going to say when they take the headset off. But the president of the company takes the headset off, and he says, I never want to ship another kitchen to a trade show ever again. I wasn't expecting that. So we talk about it, and he says, we have this issue where when we take a commercial kitchen to one of our trade shows, we have to move this entire huge steel thing that we have to manufacture, which just went up, then we have to ship it, and then it costs to get it from the loading dock of the trade show into the trade show. We have to put it together, we have to tear it down, and then we have to figure out if it's even worth shipping back. It's a lot. So what if we utilized VR to do this? You're gonna pay me to do that? Yes. Cool, I'll do it. Fine, we'll do it. So we do that. It's a wild success, but on areas that I wasn't expecting, because it allowed them to do more than one kitchen. It allowed people to 4 at a time experience the kitchen and go through and utilize parts like the milkshake machine or the fryer or whatever. People could get their hands on something that wasn't there, that they could not get their hands on when it was there. I know it's a weird way to look at it, but that's just one of the things that we weren't expecting. But it taught me a lot of this. This is where the designing part comes in. I know it took a little while to get there. We're here. So how do you design empathetically with whatever technology is in front of you? One of the craziest moments that we had part of it was this milkshake machine that people could utilize. And you had a controller in your hand, and you would go over and you'd pick up the cup, you'd take it over to the milkshake maker, you put it down, you pull the handle, it would virtually make you a milkshake. It was just showing you the process from point A to point B. And I quickly realized that there was an age gap between people who were 20 to 30, 30 to 40, then 40 to 50, right? And everyone who was like 45 to 55 at the trade show would have the controller, which we mocked that controller to be in their hand. So what they saw in VR was still what was in their hand. We thought that was the way to do it because a one-to-one. And they would stand there with that cup there and they would pull the trigger and they would just be like, and this is the worst thing you ever want to see at a trade show. They would just scream into the air, it's broken. No, you have to actually go and go pick up the cup. No, it's broken. There's a line of people who were wanting to see this because it's VR, it's new at the time, it's still a little kitschy, like people want to see this just for the entertainment value, even though it's just a stainless steel kitchen, which now today sounds really boring, but people were there. No, you have to go and pick up the cup. When I tell you, if this is the cup, they would get so close, but they would never put the controller in the cup to pick it up. And I didn't understand why. So we talked through it a little bit, and we realized, oh, they think this is a remote control. It was a generation of users who grew up with a TV remote who would sit on the couch, change the channel. You push a button, it does the thing. So there was this expectation of if it looks like a TV remote, it must be a TV remote. And if anyone can think back to the HTC Vive, the big wand with the single button, that's what we used because it helped us simplify our controls. It did kind of look like a TV remote from the future. Okay, so what do we do? Okay, just take the remote out and make it look like a hand. Simple solution, immediately worked. As soon as they saw their hand and were told to go pick up the cup, they would go, they'd put their hand in the cup, they'd pick it up, they'd go through. The silliest solution, simple beyond belief, but it was simply me not understanding. The user's not wrong. I didn't understand how the user was approaching the technology and what they were interpreting inside of the headset. So we started changing our design philosophy. I came up with a design philosophy. I'm a big gamer, big retro gamer, love the brand Atari. Not one that's talked about a lot, but I am like a weird, avid Atari fan, collector. I think the world of the company, because they did a lot to bring games into the house. They had this very similar situation. When the Atari 2600 came out, there was no such thing as a gamer. So the Atari launches, and they ship with everything from blackjack for dad, for Space Invaders for the kid, right? Like there's all of these different, there was a math game for some reason, just so they could say they were educational. They didn't know who was going to use the Atari VCS, the 2600. So they ship with the easiest controller. And there's even old commercials from the 70s, if you go watch it, where there's a kid and a grandparent playing Space Invaders, because what they were trying to communicate was anyone can play these games. It's simple. And the Atari 2600 joystick is probably still one of the most iconic controllers of all time. It's a joystick with a red button. So I took that approach to design and said, okay, if we're designing for enterprise level, if we're designing for executives, who very well could be the last game that they ever played was like Miss Pac-Man, it's gotta be as simple as that. All of these lessons started teaching me this idea of like technological empathy for the end user. Realizing that we're solving a problem for a large company that just got shocked with tariffs started getting me to realize there's patterns on like how do we take what we know, what we're passionate about, and find sticky situations and make them less sticky. I think this is probably one of the things that technology has been struggling with for the last 5 years is great, you can, but why? We keep getting sucked into the hype cycle. We read a Forbes article that told us this is the next thing. This is the next thing. No, 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 this is the next thing. None of them are the next thing unless you can do a thing with it, right? So I then get a phone call. Intel rings me up. Hey, remember us back in 2012? We see that you're doing VR. We're going to bring the Olympics in Japan into VR. Would you be interested in managing this project? Yes, please. Absolutely. I'd done the kitchens. I'm good. That's its own thing. Let's go have some fun. So my wife and I pack up. We move out to Oregon, where I'm still. And I start working at Intel, overseeing the Olympics Japan VR piece. All right, so here comes the next big hurdle. COVID hits. And the 2020 Olympics turn into the 2021 Olympics. And my ticket to Japan goes away because all of the tickets to Japan go away. So now I'm having to do all of these things remotely. We do some amazing things. I end up working in their AI space. We're working on camera tracking for athletes so we can see how fast they're running and like their skeletal tracking, things like that. If you did watch the 2021 Olympics, during the track and field portions, they would have highlight reels that would show you the runner's steps. That was actually done by basically an early version of AI that we were capturing. But we couldn't actually go and figure out how to do this on a field because we're all locked inside of our houses. So I get the idea. I kid you not, this is how we did it. We built simulations of track and field runners in Unity and then pointed cameras at the screen at the right distance and just faked it because if it could capture that, we can capture people. It was just coming up with a solution for a very broken problem for this company that we signed a contract, we said we would do this, and now it has to work. Sure enough, that actually worked. It wasn't easy, it was messy, it's almost laughable, but it worked, and it got us through the Olympics. And it also opened up the idea of remote entertainment. We're still locked down, the Olympics are over, I'm no longer working on that project. I end up getting a phone call, and I start working with Walmart. Walmart normally does sponsor like concerts and events and things like that. They've got a lot of exclusive titles coming out, like they're just getting into the vinyl sales and things like that are happening. But no one's doing live shows, so what do? And they say, hey, it's really popular to like build something on this thing called Roblox or Fortnite. I don't know, what do we do here? So I go and I spend some time with Walmart trying to figure this out. And to their credit, this was a period of time where a lot of brands were trying to figure out how to break into Roblox because it's advertising. I'm not here to have that discussion of if that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. Just figure that out on your own. But to their credit, they didn't want to just rebuild Walmart. They wanted to build something that was like actually meaningful, impactful, that had positive messaging. I loved everything that we built. But the thing that I was most surprised by, and what brought me back into the entertainment industry, is we started holding concerts because the artists that they were working with didn't have that opportunity anymore. They were stuck inside like everyone else. We did a lot of mocap work, we did a lot of animation. And then we started doing something called Electric Fest, where we had 3 growing artists. They weren't super well known. Madison Beer, Kane Brown, my favorite was Youngblood. He was really kind of just breaking into the US scene at the time. Went and did this concert called Electric Fest. And that's when I saw it. It was more people than I'd ever seen at a show. We did 3 shows in a weekend, and it was like, it ranged from 30 to 40,000 unique people every one of those shows. And those were not artists that could pull those numbers. It was just at a point where people missed entertainment. They didn't know how to get out of their house at the moment. And this was giving them an opportunity. And it felt really great to provide that kind of a solution that, yes, it was Walmart benefited from it, 100%. But so did the artists, and so did the people who were fans of them who didn't actually get to interact with them that much. And so that kind of led to now. Right now I'm hosting a podcast with Kathy Hackle, who her and I have worked in this industry all the time for like since 2016. And she's brilliant. She brings a perspective to the tech. I'm a little bit more of like the negative, bad cop. She's definitely more of the good cop. And it makes for a good show. And I've taken some time to like find my way back into the entertainment space after all of this. And no sooner do I decide I'm going to go back into the arts than AI becomes the next hype cycle. I'm not going to tell you what the answer is here. I don't have it. No one knows. But I have some thoughts. And the first lesson is I do not believe that AI is a product. Wholeheartedly. I do believe AI is a feature. And there's a distinct difference. We'd seen the products be attempted. They come and they go. Do you want to show one? You have it in your pocket. The Rabbit R1 is a good example. Thanks, Raymond. The Humane AI pen is another one. And I would actually dare say that OpenAI is trying to figure out what it's going to do. Now, this is all, forget the legal copyright conversation. We could go down that rabbit hole, and if you want to during Q&A, hey, that's totally fine. We can have that talk. But where I see AI making a lot of sense is when it's integrated as a feature, and a good example of that is Apple AI. And I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm very hardware, software agnostic. But Apple did something really smart where they made a very simplistic version of their AI. They baked it into their operating system. And it is right in there with grammar check and spell check, which is where it belongs. It is something that I can be writing, I can be creating, and then if I need to be proofread, I just hit proofread and it'll do that. Or if it needs to be made a little bit friendlier, I can do that. But I'm not prompting it. I'm not saying, hey, do this for me. And a prime example actually is this talk. This talk was not written by AI, but the bullet points were put together because I could write what I wanted to say and say, okay, how do I break this in? So I utilized Apple AI to kind of help put everything in the right format. Way faster. Doesn't cost anyone a job. That's just any more than spell check did, right? So as I start talking with new companies, they hear the podcast, they hear what I say about the AI stuff. I hear people talk, friends of mine who work in like technical support, they're all worried, oh, our big company is starting to move in, they're gonna try and replace staffing with AI. Well, here's the thing. They can try. You're not gonna get them to not do it. It will be the most expensive mistake that they make. It might cost them, that executive, their own career in the end of it, because it doesn't quite do what Forbes tells you it's going to do. It's not doing what all the articles say. It does some amazing things. We just saw a new rollout of like new image generation yesterday with OpenAI, ChatGPT. It does really great stuff, but it still takes the human. So if you're in that position going, oh, well, maybe I can replace a person, I would beg you to reconsider. In a more sense, go, how do I take this technology and solve a problem? Because I honestly do believe that while we see large companies looking at AI as a human replacement system, where they're failing to see AI's value is it takes people, really smart people, if you give it to them properly, and turns them into superhumans. But we're trying to replace humans instead of making superhumans. And I'm more of the, why aren't we just making superhumans? Where's the disconnect here? Because it's not enough today, and I don't think it will be enough tomorrow to do that. And I'm actually not worried about the arts. A lot of people, especially at something like Hackfort with Treefort, there's a lot. I hear the conversations of people walking by about the arts. I will die on this hill and say AI makes content, it does not make art. AI will never make art, humans make art, because art has purposeful imperfections. It is made with a goal in mind by a person who's trying to express something. Now, I will say, if you're just a content creator, the next couple of years might be difficult. Try to find your art, see where that goes. You can still make content, just give it more meaning, right? I'm not entirely sure how that's going to play out, but I do see it. We've seen it. This is going to sound super strange. I woke up at 5 o'clock last night. This was not part of the talk, but it dawned on me why I believe this so much. And it honestly is because of Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Stay with me. Stay with me. I know that doesn't make sense. But the first time that we saw AI used in a big way to replicate art was a guy made a song that was Kendrick Lamar and The Weeknd. It sounded like Kendrick Lamar and The Weeknd, and it went out to the world, and the world was like, oh my gosh, this is scary because it really does sound like Kendrick Lamar and The Weeknd. That's problematic, for sure. There's some real questions. There's some real intellectual property questions that go into play there. But then, I don't know why, Kendrick and Drake get into their battle. I wasn't there at the beginning, but I think we all saw it at the end. But at the beginning, one of the first things that Drake puts out is a song that's got Tupac and I think Snoop Dogg in it. Made AI replicated voices in the song. So Drake, who kind of started the whole conversation inadvertently, he didn't do it, but someone did it with his voice, of AI and music, then leverages that to kind of break into this back and forth with Kendrick Lamar, and he releases this song. And of course, the Tupac Shakur estate calls him and says, yeah, you can't do that, take that down. And they do, because they're not really entirely sure where the legality of this gray, murky area falls. So who wins in the end? It's Kendrick Lamar. Anyone who saw the Super Bowl knows that it was Kendrick Lamar. And the reason why I bring that up is because even with the utilization of AI early on, I don't believe that AI could ever, will ever, be able to do not like us. That is just a weird song. The production of it is unorthodox. It's cool, it's a great beat, but it's a very unorthodox produced song. The content of it, I don't think any AI would know to write that. It is the artistic nature of this. I've had this conversation with people about other artists, like real artists who write stuff that is unexpected. Those are just things that the AI space can't really and probably won't be able to do. And if they can, you'll at least be able to see it as being inauthentic. The last point I want to make back to the hardware is I do believe that AI exists inside of hardware. It's just not as a singular product. In 2014, let me see what my time is here. Okay, good, I'm good. In 2014, I had the opportunity to sit in an office with Will.i.am and some of the people at Google, and they were promoting something called Google Glass. Now, cutting edge technology. And I would dare say if it came out today, we would still, if what we saw in 2014 were to launch today, we would still say it's cutting edge technology. Holy cow, is it 11 years already? But it was still amazing technology. It gave you a heads up display. You had to wear this thing. Google Glass was a cool product, but it didn't have the right execution. So as Will was getting excited about playing with the Google Glass, he was super into it because it is a really interesting piece of technology. And he's really into technology. He was getting excited by what he saw, which was really cool. Off to the side, he and I talk about, I'd taken some photos on my phone. I said, come here. I show him. And so he sees now what everyone else is going to see, which is a person swiping the side of their head, semi-cross-eyed, because it's just this one single panel. He's like, oh yeah, that doesn't look right. That's the problem. It wasn't the actual technology. It was putting it onto someone's face and then what the world saw around them. And that's where we got pejoratives like glass hole was definitely thrown out quite a bit in 2014. So why are the Meta Ray-Bans starting to work, which don't even have as much interesting technology in them because there's no heads-up display, which I think we're going to see this year or maybe next. I don't know for sure. It's because Meta's integrating their technology into a product that already exists. It's a product that people already wanted. They're just simply taking the approach of making what they do a feature of the Meta Ray-Bans. There's already a market for the Ray-Bans. They already exist. So if you want a pair of Ray-Bans and you go and you look and you're like, oh, well, these are X amount of dollars, but for just a little bit more, I can get all of these features with Meta Ray-Bans. There's a way better chance. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Meta Ray-Bans are wildly successful, but they are more successful than Google Glass was in adoption. That's a really good lesson and approach on how you take whatever it is that you're doing and finding the right place for it to exist. And that's kind of where my head's at right now, is I'm taking a look at where the AI space is and saying, let's not be afraid of it. Let's be cautiously optimistic. Let's look at where things are in society right now. And what do I know enough about where I can start making some inroads and making some changes? I've got a good friend of mine who's asking the same questions, and he's looking at it in a way to, he's really into metadata refinement, which very much sounds like a job at like Lumen Industries, like on Severance. Like I understand that, but he's obsessed with making sure that all metadata from music is perfect, right? Which is necessary because if you want to find your favorite artist on Spotify, it needs to be in there correctly. And it's actually kind of tricky. It's a tricky situation. So he's figuring out, hey, can I leverage what AI is good at to reformat metadata to make music more searchable? He knows that thing. He sees something that's broken. He sees a better solution. He's going that direction. And I don't have my answer yet, but that is where my head's at. That's how I'm starting to look at society and facing this question of like unfettered AI. Listen, I don't know what's going to happen with the copyright laws. I know what they've said so far. I know where our current copyright stands. We'll see, but I think Pandora's box is open. I don't think they're going to pull it back in. So we have to have the discussions and say our place where we don't like things that are going in this direction, but also just assume this is what's going to happen. How do we like focus in it? So I don't know. That's not normally where I like to end a talk, with the words "I don't know," but I think that's where we all are right now. And in that, we can get to, I believe, we get to solutions by talking to each other, and that's why I like to open the floor to Q&A, not just for now, but we're all here for this event. If you see anyone else in this room, including myself, that you heard say something, talk to them and communicate with each other, because one person does something better than you. And you might need to know that, right? You have to know who those people are. If we stay in these shut little boxes and we keep trying to like figure out our own get rich quick technology in a hype cycle, listen, you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail. You might get lucky, but it's stacked against you. It isn't until we start talking with each other and we figure out, oh, I do this and you do that. You know what would be a cool idea? This. I know it seems simple. It's just something I think humans are getting really bad at doing. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, anything. Nothing's off limits. Like if you got something you want to bring up, say, ask, do it. Now's your chance. Otherwise, I'll talk to you in the hall too.
Anybody?
I got one person over here.
Hello. Something you said when you were working with Walmart, you said that when they were trying to create something for Roblox, that they wanted to create something meaningful. How do you've worked with enough companies and executives and stuff, how do you kind of get them thinking about more meaningful thing than just like copying what they're doing already?
By showing other companies' failures. I will use your work against you. And let me be very clear on how I did that, because yes, some of the early conversations were, well, what if you built a Walmart in Roblox? And I said, well, let me show you what happened when Forever 21 built a Forever 21 in Roblox. Beautiful world, ghost town, because it didn't have any meaning behind it. You essentially would go into a world and you actually had to pick up trash in your store and move racks around. It just was weird. Like, it looked really good. I kind of get where they were going, but you have to know who your demographic is. You can go and you can look at other worlds that are hideous looking, but wildly successful because there's something happening that means something to the player. And you have to kind of dissect what that looks like. And a big part of it was also talking with them and saying, okay, well, what's important for the company to convey right now? And let's find a way to integrate that level of meaning, so you're kind of checking off those boxes. Companies don't want to, by and large, maybe today things are a little different, it seems like, but usually companies don't want to be seen as like the big scary bad guy, you know, and they have some need to be seen as a positive light inside of a community. And so there are campaigns that are bubbling in the background. Okay, well, where do these make sense? What are we trying to convey? We do a lot with that. We actually worked with some agencies that specialize in certifications to make sure that things are done properly for young age groups. So it was certified by a number of companies that go through and make sure that like this is not just like advertisement, you know, that this actually has some viable meaning. So those are areas where I will typically lean in and try to find people who can fill in those gaps that I don't know, where I've got some blind spots. And it was successful for sure.
I was listening to one of your recent episodes of the podcast, and you mentioned that you have a background in the food service industry, and that you, that had some surprising ties into what you do, and I'm just curious what some of those might be.
Yeah, that was going back to the Frankie food. They made stainless steel kitchens. They also make a lot of stuff in stainless steel. You can go to like Lowe's and buy a sink by Frankie. They're a huge company. But getting them into the design process of using VR to help, they would make 5 designs for a kitchen and they would actually build them and kind of like racehorses, like bet them against each other. And instead of doing that, I was like, okay, we might not be able to get you down out of all 5 but if I could get you past 2 or 3. How much money are we saving in steel at this point? So we had to learn a lot about the food service industry. Going back to the movie The Founder, where they actually taped off, I don't know if anyone saw this movie, but they go to a tennis court and they tape off a kitchen. They run these drills to see what's the most effective way. They still do that. That's still a thing that they do. So how do we do that inside of the VR space? We built pedometers that were on the players so they could see how many steps it was from the soda machine to the takeout window. All of those type of things were happening in the background. Probably the one that I liked the most was we were building this milkshake machine thing, and the designer came in to drop off the 3D model, and we put it into the VR space. He said, "Hey, can I see this?" "Yeah, of course." So he puts on a headset. He goes and he looks at it. It's like, "Oh yeah, this is actually really good. This is what I was saying." And his wife was with him, and his wife wanted to see it too, because at the time VR was still very interesting. Didn't matter how boring it was just a milkshake machine in a VR space. She wanted to see it. He puts on the headset, and he was like 6 foot tall, 6'2", somewhere around there, and she was 5'5". And quickly we realized she could not reach the cups. We just couldn't do it. It was a design error. So we had to create a mechanism inside of there to actually change the person's perspective on how tall. We could actually change the designer's perspective of how tall they were in the virtual space. Something that they could never do prior to that. Opened up a world of design opportunities, because a global company making kitchens in different areas of the world, by and large, there are height differences. So the size of a kitchen over here is not necessarily the same size for the person using it over there. And prior to this technology entering their field, they were kind of fuzzy mathing it a little bit. Like, they had their standards, but it didn't always work. It's a great technology for testing ADA compliance, those type of areas. So yeah, that was that introduction into the food service space.
So setting aside the things that matter most for commercial applications like cost, practicality, marketability, do you have a dream VR project?
That's a good question. I think everybody who got into VR wanted to build the Oasis from Ready Player One. Like, that was just kind of what everyone wanted to do. This is a big part of that discussion. Let's talk about the hype cycle again, the metaverse. Who remembers that term? That came and went because it was this idea of all of these technologies working together seamlessly. And let's just face it, these large corporations don't like doing that. Maybe one day, but not today. I still think social VR is important. I'm a big fan of a product called VR Chat. I don't use it as much as I used to, but it was a great pre-visualization tool for developers. And then it became this social tool that has just kind of spiraled into its own world itself. But I'm very interested to see what comes of Orion from Facebook, or from Meta. Sorry, Facebook. That idea of having glasses that really bring the augmented world away from the bigger, bulkier headsets of 10 years ago, from like the HoloLens, into wearable glasses. I know we're still a decade away from that being practical, but I think that's where things are going to get really interesting. I'm thrilled that we live in a space and time where good VR is accessible for $2.99 at your local Best Buy. We often forget how fast this technology grew in a decade. You would have never convinced me in 2016 that by 2025 that VR would be this good, this cheap, and this accessible and all-in-one. It's bonkers how good VR has gotten. So I'm not entirely sure, but I think it would be bringing more of your actual surroundings into that space.
Anybody?
Do you still do music?
That was my wife. Yes, in fact, tomorrow at... Yeah. Tomorrow, my band actually gets an opportunity to play at the Treefort Music Hall at, is that 5 p.m.? I think it's 5 p.m. Anyways, yeah, I'm playing. I should know this. Oh yeah, but yeah, Cool Era is playing at 5 p.m., so come out and jam with us. We're a jazz band / hip hop band out of Portland, Oregon. It's all live music. It's gonna be 10 of us on stage. Yeah, it's just a circus. It will be a fun time, but yeah. Hey, surprises. All right, any last questions?
What language does the band sing?
What was that?
Your viral video recently, what was that like?
Oh my God. Okay, the viral video. Unexpected. The internet has kind of like saved my career twice. The first time was like a video on YouTube getting discovered by will.i.am, and then I did a performance at a local record shop in Portland with some friends of mine who do similar music, where I produced, I just performed this little track. It was totally impromptu, where I remixed the Pac-Man beat. And this is when I realized the algorithm, anyone who tells you they know how to game the algorithm, they've got to be lying, because there's no way this was normal. I uploaded a video it's 30 seconds long. You can see it on my Instagram if you look up Lee Kebler. And it's just a Pac-Man beat flip that I had done. I thought it was cool, so I uploaded it. And then 3 million views later, my Instagram had blown up, and it went. This is honest to goodness true statistics. In a couple weeks, because I'm not a big social media guy, my Instagram had like 200 people following it, and now it's like 22,000 over one video on a platform that I never paid attention to, and now I guess I have to, because these things do happen. That was, I'm still kind of trying to figure out what to do about that. It leads to a lot of new questions, especially from like an artist perspective.
Cool.
All right, thanks everyone. If you see me in the hall, come say hey. I'm here to talk with people. That's really the only reason I'm here, is to talk with people. So I'm approachable.